Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am excited to introduce Bett Bollhoefer. You may have seen her in some of the previous conversations I shared about spiral dynamics. She is a yoga teacher and she received her certification in Radiant Body Yoga. She creates yoga-based wellness experiences born out of her own practice, melding ancient wisdom with modern science of health. Before becoming a yoga teacher, she worked as a tech leader for 23 years, and she's also author of many books, including Good Meetings, Zen of Software Development, and Engineer Your Perfect Child. Welcome back, Bett.
Thanks, Suma. I'm a longtime fan, and I think this is my third time on your podcast, but this is very exciting for me. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been very much looking forward to this conversation because I think it's extremely rare to find a tech person, especially with the kind of background that you had, and someone like you to transition into the yoga world. I think that's extremely rare to find. So I'm very interested in hearing your story. But before we discuss your yoga world experience, I'm interested in why you left your tech career and transitioned into becoming an entrepreneur.
Well, I was thinking about this a lot, and the truth is, I was always an entrepreneur. When I was a small child, I had the lemonade stand. I actually made scrunchies for the hair, and I handmade them. My mom taught me how to make them on the sewing machine, and I would buy really pretty fabric and sew them, and I would go door to door and sell them, which taught me so much about rejection. I learned the most ridiculous rejection things in my whole life. One person said they were on a diet. They couldn't buy my hair tie because they were on a diet. I'm like, it's not a snack. I must have been 11 or 12. So I've been doing businesses since I was a kid. And I've also been writing since I was a kid. I wrote plays, and my dad unfortunately filmed it. It was extremely embarrassing when I watched it later on. But that's sort of who I was as a child. And then in my teens, I got into programming, and I wrote my first basic program when I was 16. And like I typed my name into the prompt, and it splashed my name in different colors across the screen. And I like to say that's the moment I fell in love with computers. And I was so enamored because it was actually creative expression. Now that I'm really thinking about it, the ability to create using software. And I loved Visual Basic, which I know a lot of people, well, anyone who actually knows what Visual Basic is will immediately judge me because it's really gross and a terrible language. But it had an early WYSIWYG framework, and I could drag and drop and make things. So for me, going into tech was about creation. And I was only actually writing code for about 6 years. And then I went into more architecture, which architecture is the design of a huge system. And I loved to study the customer experience. Like, what was the customer trying to do? And how could I build something that helped them be efficient and productive and get their things done with less frustration? I worked at Verizon for 10 years and did all kinds of amazing software, huge billion-dollar projects. I guess it was million-dollar projects. So it was really fun. So I've always been an entrepreneur, and even inside my companies, I would find the biggest problems and go and pitch it to executives and say, we need to fix this problem. I want to run it. So I think they call it interpreneur. There's some name, intrapreneur. Do you know that name, that term?
I haven't heard that, but I understand the concept of trying to pitch ideas within the company.
I was doing that all the time. And the thing about me that I think limited my career, I've been really like honest with myself in the last few months since I left tech, is that I get bored easily. So I get a project, I get it going, I get it funded, I get a team on it, and I do the design, and I do like the big push maybe about a year. And then I start getting super bored. As soon as everything gets like super simple and everything's flowing, I lose interest and I start wanting to move on to the next thing. I'm an initiator and explorer. So the corporations, they tend to want you to just like stick to one thing at a time, and that's like death for me. So I would say that me leaving tech is really not like a huge change. It's just now I'm building my own things around the problems that I see, which I'm excited to talk more about, like the meta crisis and the meaning crisis and these kind of really big, huge things.
That's quite an impressive tech world, tech experience you have. Why did you leave such a like logic-driven world, and how did you get into yoga from that extreme version of experience to yoga?
So yoga, I was thinking about this, like yoga started for me maybe my early 20s. My mom became a yoga teacher. And it's going to sound really like hyperbole, but the truth is yoga has saved my life. As a extremely driven person in tech, where the technology companies will eat your soul. Like you'll work as many hours as you want to. Yoga was always this refuge, and my mom always encouraged me, you know, do your yoga, get your yoga in. And that really helped me slow down. So she became a yoga teacher when she was in her 40s after she had 9 children. So she did this thing and it was really impressive to me, but she and I bonded over yoga and we would go to yoga together, and we had a favorite yoga teacher, Kia Miller, on glow.com, which was the platform that we used together. And so yoga was like a respite. I would say in my 20s, I was in an extroverted loop, which is like everything is outward, like improv and Toastmasters and volunteering and swing dancing. And it was like outward facing. I wrote tons of books in my 20s. And then there was no internal life. It was like empty inside because I was such an extrovert. So for me, yoga was a chance to slow down, get in touch with my nervous system, and move from the sympathetic, which I was like constantly in, moving into this parasympathetic. And it sort of just helped me a lot, but I needed way more help. So in my 30s, it became more of like, I'm going to do this every week. And then like towards my 40s now, I decided to become a yoga teacher. But I would love to talk about exactly what happened, because I went through like this crazy midlife crisis when I think I was 41. I had a big health problem, and I actually was literally working 3 jobs at one point. Like that was not cool. I was so sick. Like my sinuses were constantly killing me. And I was reading one of my journals. I was up like 3 hours every night with a panic attack. Okay. This is like, I was such a disaster. And so I decided when I think it was 41, I was going to do yoga every day. It might have been 42. Anyways, whatever age it was. I decided to do yoga every day after reading a book called Focus. And it was really hard for me because I'm just this crazy, like all over the place sort of person. And building this disciplined practice really changed my life. And after about 4 months of doing yoga every day, I decided to go to teacher training. I finished that in December of 2021. And then a few months later, I started teaching in my backyard just to my friends. And they were like, this is really good. You should keep doing this. You're good at this. So I loved it. And it's like a creative expression for me, creating these classes that transform and transport my students to something, to have that insight, like an aha moment of like, oh, my breath is connected to my hamstrings. Or when I calm down, I can see clearer. Just these little moments of aha. So why did I have to quit tech to become a yoga teacher? Well, the truth is, I had this revelation while meditating that humanity wasn't going to survive because of AI specifically. I was like, humanity will not survive unless we evolve. We have to evolve. And the evolution process to me is starts with the internal. It's about remembering who we are. We are each part of the universe. And having that internal self-respect and love and self-compassion, that's where it starts. And then once we feel that and we don't despise ourselves, and I'm just talking about myself, I should just say I didn't despise myself, then I started having love for more and bigger and more expansive. So really I thought about what's the world's biggest problem? Technology and our modern worldview is basically killing each of us. And I have a diagram I'm going to show you in a little while, and killing our planet and killing all the creatures on the planet. And that we need to evolve. Like each of us needs to take responsibility for our personal health and our relationships and our area of influence and improve that consciously every day. And that is how we co-create the universe and evolve together. So that's really the real revelation. And I realized I was just wasting my life at my tech job. And I needed to go and actually be part of the real solution. And one other quick thing is I realized, because I was there in the dot-com boom, and I realized that I had already been part of all these evolutions of technology. And now the tools are there. I don't need to worry about that. The tools are there and I can now build on top of them. Like if you think about the power of what we have now, we have Zoom, which to me, I was actually part of VoIP at Verizon. I was a VoIP architect. It's like so incredible how far we've come, because it was terrible in early 2000s. So you just think about the building blocks. The building blocks are there. There's no limits on one person's individual creativity as far as like getting their work out there. The gatekeepers are basically gone. People can self-publish, they can make podcasts, they can make art, music, you name it. This is the only thing that limits, but that's also like a heavy burden. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it opens up a lot more questions because you also mentioned about how you grew up in you grew up in a Christian environment. So was that also a challenge to tackle because yoga, it tends to be more Eastern philosophy. So how was that transition for you getting into the yoga world?
So my mom, was married to my father, who was an evangelical Protestant Calvinistic pastor. Okay, so if you think about like the branch of Christianity, Protestant broke off from Catholic, and then my father is Presbyterian. He's retired now, but Calvinistic. Do you know anything about Calvin? Like probably.
I don't, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I was actually thinking about it. So Calvin was this crazy, not crazy. He was this guy who was really influential um, in the creation of Protestant religion. And these 5 points really molded my mind as a child. So I would love to just read these, because I bet a lot of people don't know about it. And I think it's really valuable to know that there's people who believe this in the world, which is like, now that I'm way far away from it, it's so crazy. So the first point of John Calvin was total depravity, which just to me is the opposite of what we are, right? We are these beautiful, incredible beings of light that are just have infinite possibility. That's how I think now. But I was raised to believe total depravity of every human. Unconditional election basically means we don't have any ability to do anything. We are powerless, which is the opposite of what I believe now. And it's like, how did these, no, this is crazy. Okay. Limited atonement. This is the ultimate exclusionary principle. It means that God is going to select a very small number of people and only they're going to get saved. It's horrible. It's horrible. I know we're going to get a bunch of hate mail from the Calvinists. Irresistible grace means that you also don't have any free will. If God decides to choose you, then you can't resist it. You are just going to be dragged along by the Holy Spirit. And the final one's perseverance of the saints, which means that no one can ever snatch you out of God's hands. These are the words that I was raised with, like snatching you out of God's hand because you are saved. So it's really like a victim kind of powerlessness that is really insidious, I believe. And this is the way I was raised. So yeah, it's a huge transition. And my father probably doesn't like any of this, but I've worked very hard to redevelop a good relationship with my father, and I hope he watches this. I'm sure he'll think it's terrible, but I really want to have that relationship because it is very valuable. As you get older, you realize like, oh, family does matter. And but it is completely different. And I just try not to talk to them about these subjects, but it has been a long journey. And I was very involved and devout in my church, and I taught Sunday school. The thing that's very limiting about the specific Christian version that I was in is they didn't have any women leaders. So I was always this very leadership kind of person, and I literally could not lead in my church. I could only lead youth group. They wouldn't let me lead men or anyone over the age of like 15 or so. I could lead women, so I could lead the women's Bible study, which again is so exclusionary and just ridiculous. So I think over time, I just couldn't understand how my brain, like the truths I saw that you can marry anyone you want to as long as they're of age, and just be like love is love. And I just couldn't understand why my church wouldn't bless things like that. So there I just had such a huge cognitive disconnect. I finally had to break with it, and I am just so thankful. And now I just can't understand that at all. And now I'm more into like trying to understand like meta spirituality, meta, there's some name for it. Meta, you know what I'm talking about? Meta religious.
I know about meta spirituality.
That's it. Okay, it is meta. Yeah, so trying to get more like how can I embrace the good things about there's a lot of people who are Christians who are actually really enlightened and actually have beautiful relationships. And I think that's wonderful. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I would like I don't reject it all. And I do a lot of work on forgiveness and sending love and kindness to anyone in my life who has ever harmed me. So like just self-healing and forgiving and letting go has been a big, huge transition for me in that. So yeah, 100% difference between my childhood religion and my current mindset.
Since you have these two distinct experience, both in growing up in Christianity and then this intense experience in the tech world, do you see some similarities in the sense that tech world is kind of becoming like a religion where you kind of follow the cult of these tech leaders?
That is so fascinating. I have heard that there are companies that use things out of the religious playbook, right? And what I see, and thankfully, well, I only just recently realized all this stuff, right? Is that young people want to work just huge amounts of hours, who knows, even like 70, 80 hours a week. And it's because they're martyrs. I mean, really, you can use a lot of the words, right? So someone who sacrifices their body for the greater good or whatever that is, it's called a martyr. So what I saw in a lot of coworkers and still see in some of my friends is they become martyrs. For what though? Because the truth is, I think they're giving up their lives for money and for power. And I think it's good for them to realize that, but they have to realize it for themselves. Like I'm not gonna be able to say anything to them. So yeah, I see that happening. And then the people who are running the companies are also giving up their lives. They're so stressed out. I mean, it's at every level that people are just dying of stress related illnesses. So I have friends who are executives and they're also just having just as much stress and killing themselves over this. So the good question is like, why are we doing it? And what are the values that we're propagating? When we think about infinite growth on a limited resource like our beautiful little planet, it just doesn't make any sense. So there is something happening. It is some kind of religious blindness that hopefully people will wake up from. And I think people are waking up to it. I think there's like quiet quitting and there's all these things that are happening that I think are all in the right direction.
And when you mentioned about the possibility of AI being threat to humans, do you like what are you, many people have different reasoning behind why they think it's a threat. I'm interested in learning about like what is your insight into the AI world.
Well, maybe we can link to the episode I did on this exactly. But my mind has been changing. My mind changes like all the time. I'm constantly learning and constantly exploring and asking why and what are my assumptions. So I would say that technology is a tool. Technology is a tool. And you can think about any of the tools that we've built over our, humanity's evolution. The arrow, people who use an arrow without care and mindfulness can kill people, right? Think about the car. People, so today even people get killed by cars constantly because people are looking somewhere else, right? It's just we have these technologies that without mindfulness can kill. And I think we've just come to the point where we have all of these different kind of technologies and there's tons of great books out there. 21 Lessons for 21st Century by Harari is a great one. I can't even think of like all these other great books, but there's tons of these dangers that we have built. Daniel Schuppenmachenberger, I love that last name. He has a bunch of things about the meta crisis that we have now built tools that someone in their garage can leverage to take down society. You can think about, you know, CRISPR or, genetic engineering of viruses to make a pandemic, right? I mean, these are things that if we lived in a hunter-gatherer situation, like the worst that could happen is you throw a rock at your neighbor and it's not like that person gets hit and not everyone in the world. So the amount of mass destruction is mind-boggling and terrifying in so many ways. So when we think about how can humanity evolve to use these tools carefully, I think there's multifaceted. First thing is if we think about the kids, the children, these children are going to be writing code that's going to run our lives. Okay. I mean, it's exponential. It's an exponential growth curve. So the children of today, they're going to be leveraging the tools. So thinking about their mindset is critical for us right now. They need to be realizing that tools need to be used carefully and thoughtfully, and we need to get away from this limbic capitalism, which is all about the dopamine circuit. And you can think about so many different ways that the dopamine mechanisms in our brain and body are being hacked, like sugar. And I hate to say it, but pornography, it's very, very bad for society and relationships. And then we have all the social media and the likes and looking for like, did someone like my thing, right? So we have all of these hacks that are destroying our nervous system. And instead of these children being taught by their manager, like, okay, let's optimize for likes or let's optimize for consumption of sugar or whatever else they're trying to optimize. Instead, let's change the metric to let's optimize for well-being, right? It's like a change in values. And that's what I would love for children to realize. Like, I don't have to be following in our path that we've gone on with exponential growth. We could have a different way to tune these algorithms. Because the thing about AI and machine learning is we can tune it right now. Maybe one day it will, I don't know what will happen. It may get to the point where it's its own consciousness. But the truth is, like, we can still train it. We can still train and have values and say, this is how we like to live. And I know you're doing some more stuff on AI later, but like this lady named Frankie Louisa, she spoke at this conference I went to, What's the Future conference, an integral conference just a few months ago. And I think she was the one who said that if you take an AI and you tell it like optimize for this one thing, like the ocean, like clean the ocean. Basically, it optimized for that, and then the model killed the atmosphere. There was no like oxygen, or it was something like terrible. So the thing is, AI has to understand like can't just optimize for this one thing. I have to think globally, and that's something we can train. So I think about the children and how can we teach them to be empowered to think differently and make the world a different place, if we don't have to keep following the same old models. And then I think each of us needs to slow down and recognize when we're in our limbic system and just say, like, how can I be more mindful and intentional about what I'm eating, how I'm reacting to the world? Can I respond with love versus with this like sympathetic nervous system, fight, fright, flight? Like I'm just being murdered right now by everything that's happening. So I would say those are the things that we need to do specifically for AI. And that's what I'm worried about is just us not using the tools properly when there is a potential. Like I'm a very optimistic person. I think there's tons of potential that we can do. And Daniel Schubenmachenberger, oh my gosh, he has a lot of really good things about what we could do, like tutorials, having a tutor for every kid that is, Shakespeare, a Shakespeare bot that teaches children, right? There's so many cool potentials, and all these technologies are leveling the playing field so that kids can learn a lot more than what they could before.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be doing a deeper dive into that group conversation that we are planning for AI. We have been kind of desensitized because a lot of movies like Terminator and stuff like that, they make it seem like it's far ahead in the future. We don't have to worry about it, but that could blindside us. It could be
I think
close.
I think even the risks we may not even know the risks, right? Because we're thinking about risks that we've seen on sci-fi or just things we can project, or looking at the car, for instance. There could be risks that we don't even no one's even thought of yet, right? So we just need to be mindful. This is the whole thing. It's like, can we come to these technologies with mindfulness and thoughtfulness and slow down and make sure our blood sugar is healthy before we start like working on it? I think that's the question.
Yeah, that's the scary part, where we may not be even prepared for it, and it's already here. And we haven't solved many other major issues. It's like, it would be weird to imagine like super sophisticated robots in an environment where we still have problems of homelessness and old cultural values system. In movies don't show that kind of polarity, but they always show that it's all like super sci-fi, everything's modernized, but that may not be the case.
That's a really fascinating point. And you think about like all the technology. Like I like to think about the whole stack of like mobile plus drones plus CRISPR. I mean, we haven't even talked about that, right? There's so many, just all these technologies out there, and they're all coming together, like GPT, right? Chat. Now people can use this. And I just heard someone talking about, uh, I mean, we could just be fooled by people, right? You have deep fakes plus I'm sorry, GPT-3, not alpha GPT. Anyways, you know what I'm saying? So like think about deep fake plus GPT. Oh my gosh. What is it?
GPT-3.
Yes, thank you. GPT-3, like deepfake plus GPT-3, and boom. And then you throw some, some AI art in there, and then put some VR glasses and put it on a drone. Boom. Who knows? I'm telling you, like, there's so many combinations of technologies that we're not really, we can't keep it all in our brain because our brains are still like from the Stone Age. We just can't imagine the number of crazy combinations of these technologies. Yeah. Anyways, I get really up on this, and then I would just come back to like, what can I do? I can help my students get grounded, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to discuss that and have clarity on those kind of things in our group conversation. I would love to know, like, how do you think yoga can help in with all these things happening? How can yoga help the world?
Can I share my screen?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So thank you for asking this question. I actually put together my thoughts. So the way I think about the world, the way I think about anything is with mind, right? So this is the actual one. It's like on paper. So I think like this. I sit here, I meditate, and I draw pictures. So I sort of put it down onto in a digital format. So the problem statement is really like if you think about spiral dynamics, which I am a huge spiral dynamics lover, is orange. Orange is this modern worldview. So we used to have problems like starving dying from starvation and like getting a cut and then having gangrene and your arm falls off, right? Those kind of problems are now pretty much gone, except for maybe a few very sad places. But we have this huge number of new problems that are coming in. So I'm going to go through those things. One of the things is rejection of formal religion, which is ironic since my story, right? And then we have all this technology. By the way, this is just how my brain works. It's not like, oh, this came first and that came next. This is not like a chronological order of things. This is more like a related things together. So this is another one, the belief that individually we can do everything. Okay. This belief is like a big weight on our shoulders. Another one I think is the desire for meaningful work and not getting it. So I think there's this thing that has happened in modern times that we think work is going to give us all our meaning, and hardly anyone actually has a meaningful job. Like very most people just have to work to get money, and it's like this very privileged few that have jobs that they're like, "Oh, I have a meaningful job." It's really not true for most people. Mobility. So we built these highways and people moved to the city and people moved away from their parents and their uncles and aunts. And so we're all separated. Whereas we used to live in these family units where we had a lot of support, lack of social connection. So people left the church and they don't have this social network anymore. And they moved away from their hometown. They lost their childhood friends. So this culture of stress glorification is like a huge problem that we have. Now we have the ability to know everything external outside of our body. It's so easy to Google it, right? We know everything. And then we have this attention economy and the limbic capitalism that is enabled by technology. So we're selling our attention. And then we have this sedentary jobs that lead us to sit, and we have all this lack of movement. And all of these things lead to anxiety, depression, nervous system deregulation. And we have polarization that's happening. It's getting crazier and crazy. We have all these toxins from industry, and we have ultra palatable foods that lead to obesity, heart disease, and dementia. I hope you're not depressed yet. Cancer, right? All of these illnesses are not illnesses of our forefathers. These are new diseases that didn't exist before. I mean, dementia probably existed in some point. All right, then we have this lack of loss of rituals. We used to have all these rituals, rites of passage at ages. We went through these rituals. We had ceremonies. We had full moon ceremonies. There was all this connection with nature. Also, the loss of connection with the planet's rhythms. So both in summer and winter, we live in these heated homes and cooled homes where we don't even have to feel coldness ever. And also, we lose connection with the light. So light is very big for me and probably for other yogis, that if you don't get the proper light at the proper time, you can have a lot of problems with hormones and sleep disruption. So these are just saying, like, these are some of the problems. And then all that comes down to the meaning crisis. Like, what is life about? Is it just about more clicks? Is it just like, where are we going? What are we doing? And I think that's really like the end of all this. So how does yoga help us? We are co-creating the world. I believe that each of us individually has a lot of power. And that's why I believe yoga can save the world. So let me explain. So Yoga Sutra says, one of the Yoga Sutras says, yoga calms the fluctuations of the mind. So, right, if you look at this, all of this is the fluctuations of the mind, anxiety, depression, all these diseases, polarization, right? These are searching for meaning. It's all the fluctuations of the mind. So I believe, and this is my advertisement, doing daily yoga can help you continually every day calm the fluctuations of the mind, which then is going to lead to a cascade. So there's this cascade effect. And like just looking through, when you calm your nervous system down and bring it to regulation, I'm just going to bring my own little paper version here. You get better sleep. Like I now sleep through the night soundly every night because I am focused on my sympathetic, or moving from my sympathetic to my parasympathetic nervous system. And that allows me to sleep. When you do yoga daily, you have to eat better. You start cutting out the ultra processed foods. You start focusing on whole foods. Then you're able to focus. Your mind is not crazy and staticky, and you start being able to say, what's important to me today? How can I best use my time? You build your awareness. So both internally, like I'm really noticing more and more about which foods irritate my stomach or my skin, and which ones stop me from sleeping properly. So just building awareness, not just of our internal state, but also, oh, my husband is really busy today. Maybe I could take some time to help him. Or, oh, my neighbor has this problem. Maybe I can go help them, right? You just building your awareness, and then you slowly start being able to operate in a better way. Physical fitness, it's like this is the first time I've mentioned physical fitness, although people usually think of yoga like, oh, you're going to get great triceps, right? Better hamstrings. So physical fitness is really important. And if you think about a lot of the problems we have with obesity and sedentary lifestyle, just a little bit of movement goes a long way to help us be more healthy. And then you're going to feel better. Like I'm so much happier than I used to be because I'm doing yoga regularly. And you can mindfully make decisions. So if each of us has like an area of influence, maybe it's just our house and our pets, right? We could take better care of our house and our pets. And then from there, you can gradually make it a little bigger and bigger. But can we make the proper decision for our food every day? Can we make proper decision to go for a walk, right? Doing things that are healthy for us, just having this mindfulness, it's going to spill over into our job, into our community relationships, self-respect, and having more and more self-respect, and also living for joy, which is one of my mantras. Like, how can I live for joy today? So those are the cascade effects of doing daily yoga. And I've come up with these 9 tenets that really support this. So asking for help. Even as a CTO at one of my startups, I found that my engineers didn't want to ask for help. And this was a huge problem because they would just spin away, wasting their time, and they didn't get any help. So in our culture about asking for help, and I think it's really bad and dangerous. We need a group of people, a support system, like people who love you and you love, and making sure you're cultivating it all the time. Really, it's hard work and it's very critical. The next is, this one's very controversial. I believe that future pain is avoidable. So if you think about something very simple, like an ottoman in your living room, that every day you walk by it. The next one is future pain is avoidable, which is a little bit controversial, but I'll try to bring it down. Let's say you have an ottoman in your living room, and every day when you walk by it, you trip and stub your toe, or and bruise your shin. You can start thinking like, oh, you can bring that out to bigger things, such as eating too much sugar, for instance. So you notice like, oh, the research shows people eat a lot of sugar tend to gain extra weight, which causes obesity, which causes diabetes, which causes loss of limbs. Maybe I could cut back on my sugar and then I could not, won't lose my limbs one day. So not everything can be avoided, but we can definitely take the knowledge that we have and apply it to making our lives better. So that's that tenet. The next one is take one small step towards the good, which sometimes we see these big problems like global warming or climate change or asteroids are going to come and hit our planet or whatever, this huge problem that's too overwhelming. What if we just did one tiny step? Just like, oh, today I could recycle, right? Or I could buy things with less packaging. How about that? Just one tiny step instead of just being like, oh, it's too big, I can't do it. We could just take one teeny little baby step towards the good. This next one is something that has been a big challenge for me my whole life is self-respect. So I would obviously love to just say I respect myself 100%, but I think it's too much. And when I talk to my students, I also see this problem. So I just say 10% more. What if you just ask yourself every morning, like, what would I do if I respected myself just 10% more today? Maybe I would go for that walk. That would be good for me. Or I'll take time to call my best friend and just check in. Live with the planet. Oh my gosh. This one is so important when we really think about our beautiful little planet Earth and how fragile it is, but also that we evolved here. I don't know if everyone believes in evolution, but let's just say we were created or evolved on this beautiful little planet. And that means that the circadian rhythm is part of us. So this desire that I see in a lot of people and to be in myself to stay up till 3 a.m. being productive, it's very, very unhealthy for our bodies. We need to live with the planet, which means every day when we make decisions about packaging or what kind of car to drive or whatever it is that we're doing, which is there, everything is very complicated. Just taking a moment to think like, how can I live with the planet? So it's something that definitely as you do more and more yoga, you think about that more and more. Think New Thoughts has been like a poster on my wall for years, and it's really a challenge. And every time I see it, I think to myself, what's a new thought I could think right now? It may be almost impossible, but it's something that's really valuable to go like, how can I change or anything I could think differently about whatever it is that I'm and that's also very controversial, which is suffering is optional. And I have this decision tree in my daily yoga book that basically says, is something under your area of influence? Like, first of all, ask for help, like about a problem that you're really suffering with. Ask for help because people have these incredible ideas. You're like, oh, I never thought about that. Right? They could help you so much. They could fix the thing that you're struggling with. Then if they can help you, they might give you some other ideas, but then decide, is this thing under my area of influence? Can I change it? And if not, can I just accept it? Right? Can I accept it? Can I change the way I think about it? Like, let's say I have a noisy neighbor who is really annoying me. Is there any way I could have more empathy? Like maybe they're celebrating something really happy. Like, could I just feel the happiness? Somehow you can try to use your mind to accept the suffering versus just sitting there being annoyed. This is the last one, which is very important for me personally, and I find other people also resonate with this. Do what you say, comma, say less. So it's like overcommitters need to think about this one because it's like, oh, yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, I'm going to do that. No, I can't do all that stuff. It's too much work. It's too complicated. So learning how to say less is very, very valuable. And also, all right. So all of that. Oh, fine. Oh, yeah. Sorry. One more. Consistency is key. So many people are like, oh, I'm going to do yoga every day, maybe 2 days, 3 days. And they're like, nothing happens. I still have the flab under my tricep. It's like, it takes so much time, like way more time than you'd ever imagine. You just have to keep going. Keep going. Tons of books about this. Atomic Habits is one that's very popular, right? Just making these little changes has a huge, huge cascade on your life. Okay, and then finally, improve your area of influence. So if you can do well with, even if it's just your own health, like could you just get your own health back on track, or whatever it is, how that health goal, then you will start having all this confidence and learn, and like, oh, I could also help my neighborhood clean up. Oh, look, I could volunteer for this or that. There's like so many more opportunities if you just focus on your area of influence. Okay, so that's it. That's how yoga can save the world. And it's a picture of how my brain works.
That was a great presentation. And I love that you used your handwritten slides. It looks more real.
Yeah. It's just how my brain works. Like I just sit here and brainstorm when I'm full of dopamine.
So for these yoga practices, so just tailor it to based on what you are drawn to, what the person is drawn towards.
Well, so uh, my advice to people, and also in my book Daily Yoga, is that people find out what's going on with themselves. Do they need like muscle? Do they need range of motion? Are they looking for stress relief? Right. There's this huge amount of different kinds of yoga, from bhakti yoga, which is all about singing. There's yoga nidra, which is just resting, lying in shavasana, which is corpse pose. There's hatha, which is more about strength. And then there's things like hot vinyasa flow and Bikram and Ashtanga and all these different things, right? So I think being mindful about what each of us needs is really important when approaching yoga, and then building practice that is around what you need. So I tell people just go and explore, try things out. And by the way, accessibility, like I teach kid yoga and I teach chair yoga, right? These are totally different people who need totally different things. The kids can't focus for anything. The people in chair yoga, like lifting their arms is hard, but they both benefit so much. So I would say there's no one size fits all. People need to do the yoga that is best for their body. I teach at a studio here in Oakland that is very much more on like the gentle yoga, but we still are working on strength, range of motion, and nervous system regulation. So I'm not trying to advertise my book, but I have a whole section on what kind of yoga should you choose, and I also have a podcast which I'll link to you, that I did, that's called "Which Yoga Should I Do?" or "What kind of yoga should I do?" Something like that, so viewers can understand that there's a lot of different kinds of yoga and they're all for different purposes. So you need to tailor and think carefully about what you want. And that's why I love yoga. And there's so many different things, but I also totally love qigong, and I think I actually steal a lot of things from qigong. So like tapping and massaging and things. So there's so many great modalities out there, but I think creating a discipline is something that's very valuable for us in this modern world. It's like creating a discipline to help us get mindfully embodied.
I can see how this can be very beneficial at an individual level. How can yoga help for a meta crisis? I know you have some thoughts on
So
that.
well, that I really take it back to the person, right? So we have these huge systems that need to get revamped. I don't know if you've read the network state or know anything about Srinivasa. Balaji Srinivasan. Do you know him?
Can you repeat that?
Do
You
you know about
broke a
that?
bit.
You can link to it. He has a few podcasts, one of them 7.5 hours long. So basically, it's the idea of starting over, like a startup country. Like, can we just start from scratch things and slowly basically fresh, and then people migrate. And he talks all about how that works. I really am I really think it all comes back to the individual and making sure they feel strong, focused. This is the thing, humans need to evolve. We have to work from the top of our intelligence, which means being embodied. So I would say every person, if you have desire to go out there and fix the world, start here, get embodied, spend more time meditating, more time feeling all of the things that you need to know, wisdom, and then use that to go out there and do the thing. And think about carefully, what are my areas of influence? Who's in my network? How can I leverage the people? How can I think new thoughts, right? Like, so taking some of those tenets, how can I do one step towards the good, right? It's just, I would say it's little, but the little multiplied across everyone will be like huge. And that's how a movement starts.
That's a very valuable insight, Beth. How do you summarize the whole conversation today for a beginner?
I would say a beginner can just spend 10-minute yoga classes on my yoga channel that are 5 minutes and 7 minutes and 10 minutes. So I think just slowing down is, for some people who, like myself, are in a sympathetic external loop, it can be the most painful. I remember the first time I ever meditated, I thought I was having a panic attack, and I probably was. So I think, going to a yoga studio and just being like, "Hi, I've never done yoga before. I would love to try." Right? I mean, just start small and maybe just do once a week and just get into a beginner's class and learn. For people who do yoga a lot, I think the discipline of creating a practice that's for them, like my personal practice is, I have a chant that I do every morning that my teacher gave me, and then I do breath work. I do a lot of breath work, and I just love breath work. It is amazing. And then I do some physical asana. The thing is, I teach almost every day, so the physical asana is not like the biggest part of my own personal practice. It's more about breath work and then meditation. So that's my yoga practice that I do every single day. And it just helps me so much understand what's going on in my life and what I need to be focused on. And that is, I think, a gift that all of us can give ourselves. Like, we could just take maybe the 10 minutes. I mean, I know a lot of people have kids, they have a lot of responsibilities. Expect a little time for ourselves, it is going to pay off in a big way. And then maybe mindfully, we can all help the world become a better place.
Thank you so much for sharing this, because I will check out your meditation and some of these exercises on your channel. And I'll include a link for your Facebook. You have those on Facebook, correct? As well as on YouTube.
I have my website also has a lot of stuff on it. So I have links to all my YouTube on my bettbollhoefer.com. And also I try to post at it, and then I do post some stuff on Facebook, but I would say my Instagram at BettWorld. We're not doing any handstands. I don't do handstands. Shalabhasana is not, it's accessible yoga. It's very simple, mindful practices. And every single class I teach is about, one of the elements is going to be getting in touch with your emotional state. Like, where are your emotions right now and what are they? It's every class, because I just think we just don't have enough time in our lives to know, like, how do I feel right now? I don't even know how I feel.
I'm surely going to include all the links below, and I'll check it out for myself. I so appreciate your time today. I think this was quite, this was a fun as well as insightful conversation. It felt like it went by super fast.
Suma, I appreciate it. And I'm thankful that I'm able to create, these crazy things and share it with your audience. So I hope someone will try yoga for the first time, and I hope someone who's an expert will try daily.
And I'm also looking forward to reconnect with you for our next discussion. I think it's going to.
Yes.
Is there
Perfect.
anything else you would like to share?
No, my legs are cramping up. No, thank you so much, Suma. This is really fun. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank the listeners also. I recommend checking out Bett's channel. And if you like this conversation and found it insightful, please remember to leave comments and share your feedback. Thank you.